Hey guys, it's Nova, and this week we're doing a little bit of a story time video because this past week I went to the hospital and I wanted to talk about that. Real quick, I wanted to talk about the art. This is reused art footage. This is from the one I did, the Little Mermaid one I did with some, Bungo Stray Dogs characters. I really like how this turned out, and it's nice and summery. And because I am at the tail end of finishing my computer stuff, it can be a little bit difficult right now for me to really record art because I have started having issues with my program crashing and all of that. So that's been really fun. That has been really stressful. So that's why. So we're reusing art footage. I do really like how these turned out though, and I still would like to turn them into stickers and keychains at one point, especially because I love Bungo Stray Dogs. I may have to do some of the other characters as merpeople, and I think it would be really fun. We all know what Fish Dazai would be if you watch Bungo and you know anything about it. So, anyway, let's get into the story time. So let me just say, obviously this is not the first time I've ever been to the hospital. I try to avoid having to go to the ER if at all possible, just because you sit there for forever. And then half the time they just want to get you in and out as quick as possible. And we don't have the best hospitals around here. We really don't. I'm still congested. I know now that it's allergies, which is frustrating. But just to warn you guys, I will be again trying to cut out any of the throat clearing and coughing. But yeah, it's allergies. It's not going to go away, at least not during the summertime here. You may occasionally in the background hear birds, because there are lots of birds around here. I live near quite a bit of nature. But getting back to the hospital stuff, this is not the first time I've been to the hospital, but I try not to go if I don't have to. I would much rather be able to just set up an appointment with the doctor, but also are clinics around here that are the walk-in clinics. You've got I don't want to say the name just because you know how it goes whenever you say a name. But our little local emergency clinics or urgent care clinics type of things. My copay is like $50, and right now, I do not have $50, especially not for a copay, for me to go in and then them possibly tell me the wrong thing that could be going on, because that has happened before. Wouldn't be the first time. So, I was at work. This was on Monday. Started out completely normal. I was just doing my thing. I was checking our calendar for appointments for any of our clients that we would have to do. And then after I'd been there for like 30 minutes to an hour, after I'd been there about 30 minutes before any of the major stuff started, it suddenly felt really hot in there. It suddenly felt I was sweating and it felt really hot and humid. It's not unusual in the kitchen where I work. At the building where I work, for it to get really hot, especially because the AC, the air conditioner in there, does not like to work very well. Sometimes it can stay just hot and you feel sticky. So I didn't think anything of it at first. But it was weird that I was sweating already because it was only like 8:30, 8:45 in the morning. But the weird thing happened at around 9. So I'd been sweating. I'd been dealing with that, and then just suddenly, out of nowhere, I started getting this sharp ache. It started sharp, but then it went into an ache, but it was an intense one in like my upper left abdomen. Now, if you know anything about organs and where they're placed, there's not that much in that particular quadrant for things to really go wrong. On the upper right, you've got your gallbladder, but I don't have one of those. One of my experiences in the hospital was getting my gallbladder removed. I think I've got a video about it. Yeah, I do. Was getting my gallbladder removed. So it couldn't be that, and it couldn't be transfer pain from that because I don't have that anymore. So it couldn't be my gallbladder. And over on that side, you've got like part of your pancreas, I think, maybe your spleen, but I wouldn't have any reason for those to hurt. At least I think your spleen's over there. I'm not sure. It might be more towards the middle. But this was specifically over in the left. And it just got more and more intense. It was like I was fine, and then I wasn't fine. Now, for reference, I have a very high pain tolerance. I've mentioned it in my dental stories when I have had a tooth removed that wouldn't numb, so I felt every bit of it, and I just sat there and let them do it. to get rid of the tooth because it needed to go. But I have a high pain tolerance, and this absolutely winded me. It hurt so bad. And not long after it started to set in, I started to feel nauseous. And not like, oh, my stomach hurts and I feel sick kind of nauseous, but it was more of a, this pain is so intense, it makes me feel like I need to throw up kind of nauseous. And I had to sit down, and I suddenly couldn't hardly walk, because I'd get up and start moving around, and everything would spin. I ended up sitting down in the kitchen, and the way I was breathing, it was like I was gasping for air, because it kind of hurt to breathe in, or it wasn't that it hurt to breathe in, it was that the pain was so intense that it made it hard for me to focus on actually breathing in. And that was scary, because I don't end up in that much pain often at all. Because again, I have a high pain tolerance. That's unusual for me, for something to hurt so bad. And then it hit a point where when I would breathe out, it sounded like I was heaving, like I was gonna throw up, just because I was having to force the air out of my lungs and then back in. It was horrible, and I didn't know what was going on. So I'm in the kitchen, I'm sitting down. One of the clients walks by, and he starts to freak out because I don't look okay, and I apparently didn't look okay. So he started freaking out and started looking for my supervisor, and then one of the peer recovery specialists walks by. She notices that I'm not doing well. Now, my supervisor was not in the building at the moment. Every Monday they do a meeting. They have to have like a treatment team meeting to decipher things and figure out things for the clients, obviously. So, my supervisor's not in the building, but thankfully the peer recovery specialist knows where my supervisor is. So she goes to get her and let her know something's going on and that something really rough is going on. Because at this point, I am like pouring the sweat, even though it's not that hot in the room. And it just hurts so bad that I can't hardly move. I went to get up and get something, and I had to immediately sit back down because I got too dizzy. Which is very strange for me. That is not normal at all unless I'm having like a fatigue fit. That's the only time things will get dizzy and that my head will spin. And I do struggle with those, but I was not having one at that point. It's almost impossible to miss when I'm having one. It's not like I could be dealing with one and not realizing it. That was not what was going on. So here I was, sitting in the chair in there, and the peer recovery specialist comes back, and she helps me get to the actual office that we share with the counselors, and help me get settled in there, mostly so the guys would leave me alone and not walk past every single time and stop and just, oh no, what's wrong with you? And freak out. But she asked me if I think I need to go to the hospital, and at that point, I'm freaking out and beginning to think that yes, I do need to go to the hospital. And considering that I was voluntarily thinking that kind of goes to show you how bad and awful I felt, because, again, I don't go to the ER unless I have to, and I knew that was where I was going, because if I left early, I had enough combination PTO and sick time to cover it, but to do that, you have to have a doctor's excuse if you're going to leave early. You have to, like, bring it back when you come back, and obviously, I couldn't go to, like, the nearby clinic for that. I had to go to the hospital, but I was actually considering leaving and going to the hospital. But there was another little problem. For one thing, I didn't feel up to driving, and I don't think it would have been safe for me to drive. But what's more, I didn't have the car. I did not have the car that day. So here I am just like, oh no, how am I going to get there? Because my partner's at work. I don't want her to have to leave work to come get me and take me to the hospital, especially because she works like a half hour away, 15 minutes to a half hour away. And it's such a waste of gas. And spoiler alert, she ended up having to come get me. Because if she didn't, whether I wanted them to or not, my coworkers were going to call an ambulance. And if you don't know anything about, if you don't live in the States, and you don't know anything about like the healthcare and all that, going somewhere in an ambulance, no matter how bad the emergency, is expensive. Like, the bill for that is going to be astronomical. And I'm over here like, I can't afford a $50 copay at the nearest walk-in clinic. how the heck would I afford an ambulance ride? So I was like assuring them I had to get my partner to come and get me to take me to the hospital, and I had to assure everybody repeatedly that someone was coming to get me. Do not call 911. I do not need an ambulance. I just need my partner to come get me. And it was just one of those things where by the time that my partner got there, I was convinced that my supervisor was about 2 minutes away from calling an ambulance whether I wanted her to or not. Thankfully, she didn't. I did not have to take a ride in an ambulance. I have never taken a ride in an ambulance, and I don't intend to unless absolutely necessary. Because no thank you. For one thing, that would terrify everybody worse. Because I think all of my coworkers and clients were just freaking out. Especially with the way I was breathing and that I couldn't hardly walk. Thankfully, someone else was able to come in to help cover the shift. But I had to, as I walked back, because I had to go back to the kitchen to get my stuff. And then here I am with my hand on the wall. I had to brace myself as I went to go and get my stuff from the living room. Not the living room, the kitchen. It's near the living room. From the kitchen, and then make it back to the time clock. Clock out. At this point, it's 10. It's a little after 10. I think it's closer to 10:30. So, I have been dealing with this, and now keep in mind, this whole time, the pain's just gotten worse. The pain has gotten worse and worse, and I could not figure out what it was, and it started to, spread. It didn't move, as in, it was still really firmly in that one area, but it also spread more towards the middle, and then, specifically in a line down towards my belly button. That's the only way I can explain it. And this whole time, the pain's just been getting worse and worse. So going to the kitchen and then to the time clock, I had to go down the hallway one way, leaning on the wall to brace myself, and then back up the hallway the other way to come to the time clock and clock out, and then hobble myself out to the car and get in. So here we are in the car finally, and I've got my head back in the seat, and I'm just focusing on breathing. Now, sitting in the car, I'm able to sit back a bit more, and it turned out that helped a lot for how it felt. It took some of the strain off of sitting forward and sitting up straight, where because I'm not skinny, so everything is scrunched together whenever I'm sitting up straight, and it's frustrating. But sitting back like that helped a little bit, made it a little easier to breathe without having to gasp. And we go up there, so of course on the way to the hospital there's road work. Because why wouldn't there be? If I wasn't on my way to the hospital, there would not be road work. So, here I am, in the car, we have to wait on road work, and we finally get there and we get seated. And when I tell you that this waiting room was packed, it was horribly packed. And it was awful. And I thought we were going to be there a lot longer than we were. We got there a little bit before 11, and I think they pulled us back into an actual room at about noon. It was about noon. And that was it. Now, keep in mind, I wanted to say this because of where it is, the stomach area. It was nothing that I had ate, because by the time it started, it had been a couple of hours since I ate some oatmeal. And then the only other thing I had, other than water, was a little caramel cream candy. And that was it. And so it wasn't that. I don't think that would do it. So we get pulled back in a room. They have me go, and if you're biologically female, one of the first things they do when you go to the hospital, once you're back in a room, is they ask you for a urine sample. They're gonna do it, because that's how they do, especially for females, that's how they do for one thing, they're gonna screen you to make sure you're not on anything. That's a given. A lot of people don't think about that, but they do. But they're also checking to see whether or not you're pregnant, So I did that, of course. I expected that. I am used to that. That's just par for the course. And then I go back, and they want to do labs, because of course they want to do labs. And the really interesting part with all this is that my blood pressure was high for me. My blood pressure naturally runs far lower than most people's, but it's been running high. So you would think, also with my blood pressure being a little bit more high, that when they go to do labs and they go to draw blood, that it would flow a bit more quickly into the needle. So, I've talked about it with the long-term illness that was really scary. It took a while to figure out that I have. It is a form of vasculitis. Fun fact about vasculitis, if you develop it, you can go from being an easy stick, one try every time, first try without fail, to one of the most hard sticks that anybody will find. And I learned something new about things that they do to draw blood, and I will share that in a moment. So they had to do labs, so they had to draw blood, right? So first place they try, because it's the easiest one to find a vein, is the back of my hand, because none of the ones in my arms were wanting to show up. Now, if you don't know, getting blood drawn from the back of your hand is extremely painful. It really is, because it feels like that needle's going to come out your palm. So she gets it in there, and I don't like needles anyway. I freak out about needles. I hate them. I have a full-blown phobia of medical needles. I don't even have to be the one being stuck. I am just, if I am in the same room as the needle, no, I am freaking out. And without fail, everybody will be like, oh, it doesn't hurt that bad. I'm like, it's not the pain. You don't understand. I'm not afraid of the pain. I can deal with something hurting. It's the fact that it's a medical needle. That is the problem. And there's not really a way to fix that. And I don't think it's one of those fears that I'm really going to be able to get over, even with as many times as I've been stuck. But, so here I am. They stick the back of my hand. They get like a little spurt of blood, and that's it. Like, no matter what I do, how I try and relax or anything, there's a little spurt of blood, and that's about all they're getting out of it. I think they maybe got a little trickle into one of the tubes. So that didn't work. So they go looking for another vein. Now keep in mind, again, the pain is not what bothers me. I swear that rubber thingy, that hose thing that they tie around your arm, that hurts worse than the stupid needle does. It's not the pain. So even though I've mentioned that it's not the pain, they keep reassuring me it's only going to hurt for a second. And it's not the pain, but I will say that the pain combined with the needle is not a fun experience. That makes it worse, I will admit. But the problem's the needle. So they find a deeper vein in my arm near my elbow. You know, the inner part of the elbow where most people get blood drawn. And I am freaking out horribly because I know it's a deep vein because they said it. And I've had a deep vein have blood drawn from before. That hurts more. It really does. It hurts more. Like usually, you know, you get the needle in, you feel the little pinprick. The needle's in, it doesn't really hurt after that. You know, other than like where they put the alcohol swab on it and that got pushed into your veins a little bit and that sucks. And that got pushed under the skin a little, that hurts. But other than that, you don't really feel the needle if it's in a regular surface vein. For a deep vein, you feel that needle the whole time it's in there. And it hurts. It hurts horribly. So I knew I was going to deal with that. And she got one tube of blood. She got another mostly tube of blood. But there was still one that they could not get actually filled up. There was a little trickle, but not enough to actually do anything with. So she tried to get a little bit more into the purple tube one from it. She got a little bit more, and we were like, God, I hope that's enough. Spoiler alert, it wasn't enough. So this whole time, because I've been laying on the hospital bed, it's eased up a little bit. Not much, but it's gone from like, when I came in, I was describing it as a 9 because they did like, you know, 1, not very bad, to 10, the worst pain you ever felt. I'm over here like, it's at least a 9, okay? Because this was one of the most painful pains I had ever felt, and it was up higher, and that was awful. And so they run the labs, and the doctor comes in and tells me that they're pretty sure that it should be probably a kidney stone. And I'm like, I've seen my partner deal with a kidney stone, and she was screaming in pain, so I'm not looking forward to this. So I was not happy with that. I was relieved to know what it might have been, and I was just, if it was a kidney stone, I must have passed it because the pain eventually went away. But if it wasn't a kidney stone, it was probably trapped gas. But now here's the thing, they were going to do a CT scan on me. And one of the things they do with a CT is, you know, for a CAT scan, they'll inject you with a contrast. That means more needles. Well, for the most part, it really means an IV, but they couldn't get a vein for an IV, and they were trying to determine whether or not they were going to do it with or without contrast. The nurse that came in said that they were going to do it without contrast, ultimately. But the thing is, they come back from doing the labs, most things look normal, but they didn't get enough blood for the purple tube. So they had to try and stick me again. They went for the other other arm this time, thank God. But, like, I am freaking out. It's in a spot, it's like right above my tattoo on my arm. So I have a bruise over there, a big old bruise on the back of my hand and on my arm. And it just was awful. It was horrible and it sucked. So they stuck it. And now I will say, the person who stuck me on the other arm, he did have a cool tattoo. He had a Hakuna Matata tattoo. And he had, like, the little lion symbol that's on the tree in The Lion King. The Lion King's my favorite movie, and that helped distract me a little bit while he was sticking me. But since they still couldn't get any more blood, I learned something. If you're a hard stick and they can't get you, they can use an ultrasound machine to find a vein and get a needle into it. Now the thing is, it's much slower, and the needle's much longer. And yeah, they actually did do the ultrasound on my arm. It was really weird, because I've had an ultrasound before, because that's how they check to see if you have gallstones. So I've had an abdominal ultrasound on that side before, and I've had ultrasounds, towards my lower abdomen because of my PCOS. I had never known, though, that they could do one, like, on your arm to find a vein. And on the one hand, needles, I was not happy. On the other hand, really fascinating. And as much as I hate needles, this is gonna sound weird, as much as I hate needles, I kind of wish I could have experienced it, just because it would have been fascinating. And if they could have let me actually see the ultrasound screen, that may have actually distracted me enough to not freak out, because I am just so fascinated with things like that. But thankfully, I did not have to actually experience it. They did do the ultrasound, but I was freaking out so much because I knew it was a needle, that the guy was like, before I stick you, I'm gonna make sure that we really have to. He went and he said, I'm gonna make sure that we don't have to get you an IV before we stick you and draw blood. And I'm just like, I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, because I am freaking out. My voice is shaking. I am, like, in tears almost. And just, they come back, and the thing with the purple tube was, I guess that's how they also, they use that blood sample too, to, double check and see if you're pregnant, if it comes back, inconclusive for the pregnancy test with the urine. At least some of the blood is used for that. Thing was, they didn't get enough blood from me. But here's the thing. The really weird thing. They couldn't take me down to radiology and give me a CT because my urine pregnancy screening came back inconclusive. Which is really weird because, I obviously am not. There's no way I could be. But the funny thing is that, I found out later that some of the medicines that I am on can cause a false pregnancy or cause an inconclusive result. It's just, it can happen. So they asked me, by this point the pain was getting better, it was almost gone. And part of that I think was the adrenaline from dealing with the needles. It was a great distraction from the pain, but I think it was from the freak out from the needles that my brain was not on it, so I didn't even notice that it was fading. But by this point, it's down to a 2. And I'm at the point of, I don't care, I'm done with all of this. And so, I didn't have to get stuck again. They asked me if I wanted to see about it. But if you have even a chance of being pregnant, radiology will not touch you. Because they don't want to be held liable in case anything goes wrong. And it's understandable because it can cause complications. Because people do come in and lie about that. People do come in and they lie about whether or not they could be. And it's frustrating. So because of that, they have to be as cautious as possible. So thankfully, it wasn't that. They didn't have to do that. And they let me go because it was feeling better with instructions to come back if it gets worse again. And they gave me some medicine for a kidney stone. Now the thing is, at least up to this point, so far as I know, I have not passed a kidney stone. And you don't just pass it and not realize it, okay? It's very bad. It's awful. So we're kind of wondering if it was maybe trapped gas, because that can be excruciating. I know that trapped air in your body, like after a surgery, can be very painful. Like, because I had that after my gallbladder, and it mostly transferred to my back, and it made my back hurt horribly. But, so that might have been what it was. Maybe it was a kidney stone and I passed it and didn't realize it. But I don't know. Ultimately, I went through all that and I don't even know what was actually wrong. But there you go. There's the fun time that here recently that I went to the hospital and have no idea what was actually ultimately wrong with me. This was a longer video, but I liked it. I hope I didn't talk in circles too much. Like I said, my brain is a little bit scattered on it because it just happened a few days ago. And you would think I'd be able to keep the events straight if it happened just a few days ago. But I've had a very exhausting week, so they are not straight in my brain. And I'm lucky if I can keep events straight anyway. But thank you guys so much for watching. Have any of you guys at all had some like scary hospital trips recently, or things that happened that freaked you out and that you didn't know what was wrong with you and then it just went away? Because like, I would like to know. I'm not alone on that. But thank you guys so much for watching. I want to thank my patrons, Inside Chaos, Salmon, and Creativa Artly. You guys are awesome, and I appreciate you guys so much. And thank you everyone for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!